Okay, hi Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking to you a bit about mild hyperbaric oxygen therapy and how you got started into this therapy with your clinic at InsideOut Wellness Hyperbaric Center. Um, Now, how did you first get introduced to hyperbarics?
So I got introduced to hyperbarics dealing with some of my own health issues probably about a decade ago. And I saw such amazing results. And so did the gentleman that is now my business partner at Inside Out, that we had decided that we were going to try to make hyperbarics more affordable for folks. And we sat down and drew together a business plan, and the numbers worked out. So in June of 2016 is when we opened our doors here in Little St. George, Utah. And we've just been growing ever since.
Awesome. Now, you offer other therapies at your clinic, is that right? Could you kind of go over some of the other alternatives? Because I know at your clinic, you're not like a conventional therapy center. You have a lot of therapies that work on solving the root cause of the body, not just symptoms or covering them up. And you also have some pretty neat testing body scan devices that you have.
Yeah, so at our hyperbarics place, we have seven chambers, mild chambers that are pretty busy all day long. And we also have a full spectrum infrared sauna with light therapy. We have something called an in-body scanner that gives a lot of athletes to come in and use. But my other business that's not associated with Inside Out, we do a lot of live cell microscopy and things like that. So currently I have about 30, I think it's like 33 doctors, different parts of the country that will fly their patients in and either to help me try to unravel what's really making them sick, or we already have an idea of what's going on and they've been doing therapy. And then it gives us a live look at what's going on in the body right now and helps that physician determine where to go from there, basically, to give us
Now,
a bird's eye view. Is the therapy really doing what it's supposed to? Is there something we need to switch to? Are there other therapies we can add to that one to help it? So it's a pretty fascinating tool to use in situations like that.
now with the special test, what are some of the things that you might be looking for that would help give you a closer look at what a person is dealing with or how could it be healed?
Yeah, so the lifestyle analysis is basically you're just getting a like a real-time view of what's actually on inside the body. So we get a lot of folks, specifically from like the Lyme and the mold world, with some of the Lyme patients where the testing's really kind of shoddy, like there's a lot of false negatives through the molecular testing and things like that. With live cell analysis, you can literally, if a microbe is there, there's a really good chance you'll actually see it in real time. And so you can help, unravel, do I really have Lyme? Do I really have Bartonella, Babesia? Are there other co-infections? And then, since about the end of 2019, just seeing a ton of patients that have actual filarial parasites in their system. So worms that are out in the periphery of the body, just not in the stomach. And so that's been the most unique thing I've probably seen, since the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, is just this giant uptick in folks carrying these parasites. So, and then also we get, other things as well, just not the microbiology stuff, but also you can see how the immune system's functioning in real time. Most testing you get from the hospital, they just count different types of immune cells or ratio this immune cell against that one. Well, when you look at, the blood whites alive, you can see, okay, yeah, I do have the right amount of white blood cells, but are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? So that's another aspect of live cell that's really cool. And then, of course, you can see, some nutritional stuff going on, some dehydration, problems with iron or B vitamin metabolism, different things like that. So it's really a tool to um, help these physicians that I work with be better at what they do.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Now, parasites is actually something I got into recently because a lot of people don't talk about it. So if you go to the doctor and I say I'm iron deficient, I've never had a doctor bring up parasites, but it was something that I found out that parasites, I kept I kept taking iron supplements and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was reading a lot of research just about how much a parasite can take from your body, how it can take your nutrients, make you anemic. And the other thing I was finding is it could even be related to anxiety and cancer. I know there was some new research on that. So a lot of the parasites will eat up a person's like B6 and B12 and really affect their anxiety. So, and parasites, a lot of people ask me, how do I know if I have parasites? How do I test for that? Is that something that the test would show?
Yeah, I mean, it's so if you take a random, one drop of blood, 'cause there's a lot of one drops of blood in this, and it's like every drop of blood circulates every 45 seconds through our body. But sometimes these parasites are so few and far between. When you hit that finger, sometimes you don't see that there's actually a parasite there. And then sometimes they stay in these microcolonies, which are really amazing when you find them. But then sometimes there's hallmarks. You see things that will tip you off that there could potentially be a parasite there. So we combine that with some of the other tests that the doctors have run, and then also the whole effect that parasites have on us during full moons. So if, it usually starts a couple of days before the full moon and will usually end a day or two afterwards. But if somebody sees a rise in not only their symptoms, but their quality of sleep really disappears during a full moon, that could be another really good sign that there's a parasitic infection in that person.
Now, I've heard a couple of theories. Is there a theory to that? Like, is it the gravity of the mood will increase the parasite activity?
Yeah, so in parasitology, they've known this for quite some time, but here in the States, I don't think we take parasitology very seriously. Like we have probably the worst testing in the world here. But the theory is the physiological reason why it's happening is the bugs go into a breeding pattern around the full moon. So the immune system in the body sense this, and then you start getting these dumps of adrenaline, of dopamine into the system to supercharge our white blood cells to go battle. And what happens is when you're getting those little dumps of adrenaline to make our army even better, then you get the symptoms of that where it's harder to sleep, inflammation can go way up. And those are generally what drive the symptoms that you see that people have during full moons.
Oh, very neat. I believe I met you several years ago when I was doing hyperbarics for my daughter. Something that brought me to the hyperbaric world was a lot of research showing that hyperbarics could really impact someone with a brain injury, specifically in helping to repair the brain, mental health, PTSD. That's something that's really important to me because, as you know, mainstream medicine doesn't offer a lot of hope in these areas. Do you have any experience or kind of things you've seen that it helps that community within your clinic with hyperbarics?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever a week at my clinic where somebody's not in there for some specific type of traumatic brain injury getting help. Um, one of the cases that, I can talk about because I was given the okay by the individual. He's a really famous ex-football player. He's in the Hall of Fame. But anyways, he had used his head as a battering ram for so many years. And when he got into I think it was his middle 40s, to late 40s, he couldn't remember anything. He was doing movies, he was a movie star, and he was also doing broadcasting for either CBS or ABC, I think, in doing football games, but then he couldn't remember the names of anything. Standard medicine said there's nothing you can really do about this, but then he ended up at the Amen clinics in Southern California. And Dr. Amen has been using hyperbarics for a very long time to help folks out with brain injuries. And he ended up buying a chamber, got through like 180 sessions before he went back for his follow-up appointment. And Dr. Amen wasn't aware that he had bought a hyperbaric chamber. And after he'd done the brain scans, he came in, he's like, "Dude, your brain is metabolizing like you're 40 years old again. What happened?" He's like, "I bought a chamber." And we have his before and afters of his SPECT scans. But up until he recently passed away last year, and he was in his 80s, this football player, he could remember everything again, forgot nothing. So it just shows you the power of hyperbarics, even though the injury was from decades prior, and standard medicine gave him no hope. Through some dietary changes, I was taking certain nutraceuticals as well, and a lot of hyperbarics. He got his brain and his memory completely back.
And I think I see a lot of people who think maybe my brain injury was too long ago to heal. And I always try to tell people the same thing that I don't believe it's ever too late with an injury or disease to try hyperbarics because I've seen certain cases where the injury, like you stated, was 10, 20 years old and the person tries it and it's still effective. And unfortunately, mainstream medicine, they basically tell you that a year out from your injury, that's all you get. That's what they tell everyone, standard care. So it is unfortunate because it has been found so useful, but unfortunately, it's still not advocated in the mainstream world the way it should be for brain injuries.
Yeah, and on that front too, it's like, even so, I think is the injury is a longer time back in the past. You can still get a lot of benefit, but sometimes it takes more sessions to get there. So, I get a lot of young kids, parents are finally catching on that are, playing high school soccer, football, whatever, and they get their bell rung. And parents will bring them in, and usually 5 to 10 sessions later, if it's just after it's happened, most of the symptoms of having a TBI are completely gone. But, and when these injuries have been setting for decades, you're not going to do 5 or 10 sessions and be healed or have a lasting long change. But hopefully, in those first 5 to 10 sessions, people will see some improvement, which will give them the confidence and courage to keep going with the program. And then you get up there in the 40, 80, 120 session mark. That's when you really start to see people change.
Yeah, HBOT definitely takes more consistency and time, but it's definitely worth it because, in my experience, the results are very great and they're permanent. I know my daughter, when we got to a certain point, a lot of people think, well, if I stop doing HBOT, the results will degress. But in my experience, from what I've seen, everyone's had really good results and they've stayed. But as you stated, diet and other factors are important. You can't just expect that it's a magic cure and not do your homework at home. But when used in the right setting, it's very, very effective. So something cool that your clinic does is when patients want to come in and use your chambers, you not only have chambers in your clinic, but let's say people can't come to your clinic or maybe they live several states away. So what are some of the services you kind of offer in helping people start hyperbarics who aren't directly close to you or maybe that just can't come into your office that are close to you?
Yeah, so we not only sell a lot of chambers here in the States, but we also have a rental program. So, yeah, so it's just two options for folks. If folks are going to need to rent for more than 2 to 3 months, we're just kind of like, hey, you pay for more than like half of this chamber, what it would cost new, and try to get them to look at that. Like if they've got to do a whole bunch of sessions in a really short amount of time, I'm just always like, if you go session by session at somebody's facility like this, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Or if you rent this chamber for 4 months to get through that, but if you buy it, pound through your sessions as quickly as you can, get back a hold of us, and then we'll find somebody if you don't want your chamber anymore that could potentially want to buy it from you. So we just kind of look at that cost analysis. Like if you're going to be driving, say there's a clinic an hour away, but that's 2 hours of travel, mileage, all that stuff. What if we drop a new chamber in your home? You use it for those 3 months. It's going to save you a couple $1,000 after we sell the chamber. You'll be money way ahead. And plus, you didn't have the inconvenience of having to travel and go somewhere else to do it.
So you could actually rent one of the clinics from your chamber just to use at home with your guidance still, is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think we have like 6 rentals right now in our fleet, and that level kind of fluctuates from time to time just because there's some people that will buy, or lease this chamber from us for a specific thing, but then they notice their energy levels are a lot better. Their skin looks a lot, better. They get comments all the time how they're just looking like they're glowing, and people just don't want to give it up. So they end up just, a lot of people just end up buying them from us at that point. So.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome with the rentals too, because I know sometimes when people get injured or a broken leg, it's not always, some people just prefer to heal in the comfort of their home. And that's the great thing about mild hyperbarics is you have a lot of options. And you have a lot of options, even ranging from chamber sizes in your clinic, whether you're in a wheelchair or you have disabilities. I know you guys offer a lot of options to accommodate everybody's condition there also.
Yeah, yep, that's true. We have, we have vertical and lay down chambers. All of our lay down chambers are kind of up on these pedestals. So folks can just sit down and just kind of roll into them. And then our verticals, we have three different levels of height built in underneath our verticals. So, these folks come in, they're like 6'7". You don't want them sitting down in a little teeny chair at floor level because then it's so hard to get them back up out of there. But we have them sitting up on these, say a 16-inch tall base, then they can just literally back up to the base, sit down in the chair, and then when it's time to get out, they just step their feet out and then they can stand straight up. So we try to make it as convenient as possible for everybody. Now, sometimes there's some situations, that are just, not the usual ones you encounter, and you can't accommodate everybody. But for the most part, we try to make it as easy and accessible for everybody.
I think when I was looking through your page, I even saw some little pets in there too. Can pets use the chambers?
Oh yeah, yeah. Humans respond really, really well to hyperbarics, obviously, but it's amazing, especially with dogs, how well they heal. On our website, InsideOutHyperbarics.com, we had a little Chihuahua recently that was brought into us, and they basically said, this little dog has a brain tumor, and you probably should just put it down because the puppy just started like not being able to walk a straight line. He was just kind of wandering. And then it was like he would like kind of spread his legs out like he had really bad vertigo, like the whole room was rocking with him. And then it got to where he just needed care all the time. And so they came in, they didn't want to put this little dog down. I think the dog was not even a year old yet, and started doing hyperbarics. And today, I think they got through a total of probably 30 sessions because one day the husband would come in with the dog, the next the wife would come in. And now the dog is back playing again, fully functional, doesn't have any of the symptoms that she used to have. And they're planning on going back in and getting another scan of the brain done to see how far that tumor has shrunk because the dog is no longer showing any of the symptoms that the tumor was causing the dog to have. Let's just put it that way.
So it's very beneficial for tumors and cancer then.
Yeah, in dogs, this is the second time we've had a dog with cancer respond extremely well. And then we've had other things where, people are told that, your dog's 12 years old, he's lived a good long life, you should probably just go put him down because he's got all these ailments. And then these people will buy hyperbaric chambers, and the last one, this lady in Florida, her dog lived to 19 years old and was active and playing even though they told her 7 years ago the dog needed to be put down. So animals respond extremely well to hyperbarics. Cats, when they get in
Children,
there, sometimes they can get a little fidgety, and not want to be in there because cats are kind of cats, how they roll. But usually dogs just love it. We have a veteran right now that we're sponsoring for free hyperbarics, and he has one of those German shepherds that's trained, all in German. It's a service dog. And that dog knows exactly what to do. He comes and lays down. The dog just gets in there, and then the dog lays her head on his feet, falls asleep, and he does his hyperbarics, and all good to go. So,
yeah, I've seen a lot of dogs and cats. To be honest, I haven't seen it outreach much more than that, but I think the future hyperbarics with animals is a very interesting area of research and what they will do with it. I know a lot of cats. I know a lot of people who have a home chamber at home and they'll do their dives at night and their little therapy dog will just come right in with them and they dive together. And I think that's really cool because they're both healing in one session. And that's what I did with my daughters. A lot of people think like my child's going to be scared in there, but typically you go in with a child, you can bring toys, you can bring a laptop, a little tablet. And I would always go in with my daughter and we would just treat it like an hour of TV time, but she always really, really liked her sessions. um, Over time, she HBOT for my daughter is one of the biggest things that's improved her recovery. We've tried many therapies, um, many different suggestions from doctors, and HBOT wasn't anything any doctor ever recommended to me. They never said, hey, you should try hyperbarics for your child. But being online, the children I was watching that did recover the most from brain injuries, typically those were always the ones doing HBOT. So at some point in their recovery, it seems like that gave them the biggest area of just this little boost that they needed. Even I've seen it do a lot more even than red light and molecular hydrogen therapy or PEMF, which also has a lot of research to it. But in my opinion, hyperbarics is like the number one thing that really impacts brain health.
Yeah, and I think that's safe to say with some of the studies that are coming out now as well. I think, well, what I'm hoping is at some point that it will become the gold standard in even in allopathic medicine for any traumatic brain injury. Just because I think if, from what I've experienced, played a lot of sports when I was younger, and my friends that got major concussions, that never got those brains fixed, they all kind of had extremely hard lives and they all died really, really young. I think a good example of that is, there was some other things going on with Aaron Hernandez as well, but that kind of shows you that once those traumatic brain injuries happen, um, there's a good chance that if those neurons aren't repaired or recovered, that it can really change somebody's personality, and it generally doesn't do it for the betterment. So, in some of the times that I go talk to little sports leagues around here in the area where I'm at, I just let parents know, hey, they might get a little concussion or things like that, and there might not be any side effects to that first one. But if they continue to play these sports, or even if in everyday life, even the smallest shake to the head now, if it has not been repaired, can lead to a lot worse TBIs later on down the road. So we just recommend, hey, even if there's any question, bring them in for a short run of hyperbaric sessions. It's going to cost you, a couple $100, but it might be some way to ensure that later on down the road, that child doesn't have problems, in life that could be associated back to this incident. So,
Absolutely. I kind of feel like hyperbarics too, anyone with a neurodegenerative disease, meaning they go backwards, brain injury, dementia. I think one of the most valuable things they could invest in is hyperbarics because it helps repair that backward spiral. I know for my daughter it did. She was doing a lot of backwards and I was really worried about her. And every time we kind of get more back into hyperbarics, it's like it just pushes her forward and I stopped seeing that decline. And I believe they see that in dementia too. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, we've had a lot of really positive results with dementia, Alzheimer's, a lot of those conditions that affect the brain. Hyperbaric seems to provide a lot of value to them. Now, there's not definite studies on every single one of them, but just from what we've seen in our office and then talking with other folks who run clinics, there's definitely a pattern there, and it needs to be studied out. I think in a lot greater in-depth studies being done with it, but it's doing something fantastic for these patients. And I think it probably has to do with, of course, the neurogenesis where you're rebuilding neurons, but also the amount of inflammation the hyperbarics will reduce in their system. It seems to help them a ton.
And I think that's the thing about hyperbarics too is the research that they have been able to provide. It's always positive. It's but there's not a ton of research on hyperbarics or mild hyperbarics just in general. Some of the alternative therapies don't exactly just receive funding or studies as common as maybe a mainstream medication or therapy would.
Yeah.
But
Part of it as well is the trouble with having a sham group, right? Because even if you put people in a chamber and you pressurize it up to 1.1 ATA with no extra oxygen, you're still inducing a hyperbaric effect. So there's that, a lot of these studies, when they get to the end of it, they say at, 2.0, all the participants showed amazing improvement, but also the sham group at 1.3 ATA with no extra oxygen showed almost the same amount of improvement or sometimes more. And so they get stuck in that area going, well, was it a placebo effect? No, it's just that even with the slightest raise in pressures, you're still creating the hyperbaric effect. So it's one thing that's not only made it, I think, more difficult to maybe get insurance to cover some of these conditions for hyperbarics, but it also gives a lot of the naysayers, this false sense of that everything hyperbarics does is placebo, and that's just not true.
now, would there be something to a lot of people say, well, you can't dive without oxygen. You know, you can't. So I've heard a lot of people say they'll just dive on room air without the oxygen and they see improvements. And it's as you stated, people will say, well, that's not right because they didn't use oxygen. Is there some mechanisms to just using the pressure and not just the oxygen?
Yeah, because ultimately it is just the pressure anyways that I mean is really the magic. I mean, we're there to get as much oxygen as we possibly can, but it's actually the pressure that's forcing the oxygen into the plasma where we normally don't carry it. And then that oxygen is leaking out in the veins and vessels, the tissues around those veins and vessels. That's what really sets off all of the epigenetic changes that makes hyperbaric so amazing. It's what induces all the circulating stem cells to be released. So, and then sometimes we start people out just on room air in our facility. So if they have an extreme neurological injury, sometimes if you put them in there, even at 1.3 ATA with a lot of oxygen, it will put them into a healing crisis where they're healing too quickly and they can start to go backwards a little bit. You know, it's kind of the same reason why there's a lot of thought out there that with neurological conditions, you shouldn't be putting people above 1.3 ATA for a while. So we just have to be in our clinic very careful if somebody is presenting with an acute TBI. We always start out with people just at room air for their first couple sessions. We take them all the way up to the 1.3, but we just want to go really slow because I've had several instances where there's a traumatic brain injury. We're doing 1.3 ATA, but we'll put them at like 6 liters per minute of oxygen. And over those first several sessions, they'll start to go backwards because they're in that healing crisis like state. And then sometimes they don't want to come in and finish their sessions. So we ramp up extremely slow. And that's where just having a chamber, even if you can't get the extra oxygen, there's so much value to it.
So more is not always better with HBOT. It's not like just because a clinic might have this hard chamber that goes up to 3.0 with 100% oxygen, that necessarily doesn't mean that you're going to go there and get way better results and no side effects. Sometimes going low would be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's with a lot of treatments, right? Like if you're in a car accident, take you in the ER, you know, a certain amount of morphine is really going to help with that pain. They give you a little bit too much of it, not good. So I think it's just like with every treatment, I think having kind of a baseline of, you know, there's situation A and this is how we start situation A. And then you can adjust as you go along throughout the sessions. But yeah, just having a chamber itself provides a ton of value.
Now, if someone is kind of dealing with one of these chronic diseases, what is the best way to reach out to you for maybe a consult or for them to talk to you about concerns on what protocol they should be using? Do you guide them in that?
Yeah, I mean, they can just reach out to me through the Facebook group. You know, I'm in there, all my information's there, or just through our website at InsideOutHyperbarics at gmail.com. That's my email. And our website is InsideOutHyperbarics.com.
And you
So,
all the states?
yeah, absolutely.
So they
Yeah, we
ship
can ship
contact.
anywhere in the continental United States. Just when you start to go to Hawaii, it's like what they want for shipping. It's just like, it's a
Yeah.
little pricey, but.
So the unit will ship right to you and you can set it up, work through your office, your video clinic, and still heal at home with the guidance of your profession.
Yeah, so what we've done is for most of the chambers that we sell, I've went and made custom installation videos where we show taking each part out of the box and connecting it and how it all goes together. And sometimes even with those videos, it's a little bit confusing when folks are trying to set it up. So what we do is if they get stuck through the video process, then we just set up an independent Zoom call where I can show them because I have these units set up at my office. I can literally go show them, oh, this is what's wrong. This is what it looks like. And then we get them, you know, get their chambers set up. And then we also have a couple different videos that are like best practices videos for doing in-home hyperbarics and also kind of do's and don'ts as well. So we just try to make, if folks can't come into our facility to let us help them on the daily, we try to give our knowledge to our paying customers on what we've learned so their in-home hyperbaric experience can be as best as it can possibly be.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because there's a lot of places that don't offer that. And I know a lot of like medical moms will get stuck with, I want to treat my kid, but I can't drive to another state every day. Or there's a lot of people who just need to heal at home because of chronic disease. And maybe they have a bit of knowledge. So I think that's an amazing service you guys offer. I know in my state, being in Michigan, it's really hard to find. No one here does it. And a lot of people just get stuck with like, how do I start? How do I do this? And you kind of Google HBOT at home and all these chambers come up. Some, it's a hard place to navigate if you are just entering and you want to start, but you don't have guidance.
Yeah, and the one thing we always tell folks, we kind of like to get the word out there as well, is like, yes, we have a business and we're here to make money, but we also are trying to be one of the ones that helps hyperbarics become more of a mainstream thing. And you do that by having folks that have really good experiences with hyperbarics, whether it's in a clinic or in their own home. So if anybody out there is having any problems with their hyperbaric chamber, or they've got questions, concerns, whatever, please just shoot us an email. I mean, it only takes us a couple minutes to respond to emails, but if you can make that individual's not only hyperbaric experience better for them, but also help provide better quality of life for them or their loved ones, those are 4 or 5 minutes that we'll spend all day long in our clinic. So please, even if you didn't buy from us, if you have questions, just ask.
Okay, so that's great to know. So they don't even have to buy to you to still be able to consult with you.
Yes, please just let us know. We would love to help.
Okay, and that's a huge actually need I see in the medical mom community because oftentimes maybe a charity will give them a use chamber and they'll call certain clinics and they'll say, if you didn't go through us in person, we're not going to guide you at home. So that is a big area that I see and not a lot of people need help with. And I think it can be a little sad when they don't get the help they need because just because you don't spend a certain amount of money to go in the clinic, like you said, it still can be a very important part of your recovery. And also, to me, it's a safe, very effective therapy. As you've stated, I've seen very young babies do it, almost infants. I've seen cats do it. I've seen elderly do it with a lot of problems, and they go in with no issues at all. The side effects, if you do it right, in my opinion, are very minimum.
Yeah, and I mean, kids, as you bring up a good point there, kids is, young as just less than a month old. We've had getting hyperbaric chambers for some extreme, they have meningitis, these twins. This is one story that just popped in my head, but they basically told the parents it's just a roll of the dice whether they're going to make it. And they didn't think they were going to make it, because they had infection in their central nervous system, but they bought a hyperbaric chamber. Doctor told them, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. Well, that was 4 years ago, and now the kids are completely caught up to their peers because they thought they might have brain damage from this infection. No, they're great now. So kids just respond extremely well to it. And yeah, if hyperbarics can be in somebody's healing journey and they're just not sure like what steps to move forward with, please just hit us up. We'd love to help.
And I believe I had a similar experience because I know when I first went to my daughter's neurologist, she basically told us that it wasn't proven or there wasn't a lot of research to it or it may not help. But when you go online, there's studies for it, there's documented case. It seems to be definitely not the case online with everything. Um, I've seemed to lost Ryan. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that hyperbarics can be used for. But you brought up a really good point. The risk versus reward. There's very few things that can go wrong with mild hyperbarics if you're properly screened for them. I mean, there are a few contraindications that you absolutely should not get in those chambers with. But the risk to reward, not much chance of horrible things happening in these mild chambers, but there can be substantial reward on the other end. So that's another thing that we're constantly putting in folks' ears here in the little area that we're at. Like, yeah, I mean, there might be a little discomfort in your ears, X, Y, and Z, but there could be this major reward and this better quality of life on the other end. So that's just one thing that we like folks in the mild hyperbaric community to talk about.
And definitely, and I think there's also a little bit of misconception just to touch on that for the beginning user. When you go kind of on Google or you kind of research these things, most of the kind of the side effects that people do talk about typically are with higher pressure units.
Yes.
Soft chambers are very different than a high chamber medical chamber where you hear about maybe it'll cause ear problems. Lower pressure, you don't go quite to that level that will cause damage. So it is very different. And Google can be a very unreliable place to find information on this topic because when you Google things, as you know, kind of the paid articles will come up paid by for a heart clinic chamber. So it's not, I've from what I've seen, it's just very inaccurate information online when you
Yeah,
Google that.
it definitely is, and it's funny because when you travel, so I got on Google and just started doing some searches this year when I was in South Africa, and it's pretty interesting the quality of information you get based on where you live as well. So in South Africa, I was pulling up, really positive articles, on the first page. Um, they were everywhere, but when you Google that here, you usually have to get through the first couple pages before you start really seeing some positive posts about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, especially mild hyperbaric. So, yeah, it's obviously orchestrated and done that way for a reason, but it can mislead people and send them away from a potentially life-changing therapy.
Absolutely. Finding the right people to guide you in hyperbarics is definitely important. And it's definitely important to make sure you get your information from a non-biased source, not not certain websites online. I totally agree. And the people who have been through this, the people who have healed, um, that's the most important resource you'll have because those are the people who have lived through it. They're not someone getting paid by a study or maybe getting paid through a doctor's office. But the people who have healed at home with mild hyperbarics are the people that have inspired and I've who have led me in the right direction because from their healing journey, that's what started mine and it's healed me too. When I first started hyperbarics, I don't know exactly what caused it, but I had really bad chronic fatigue syndrome. I couldn't even, so I wanted to be a cosmetologist and I would stand up for 10 minutes and I would get dizzy. And I'm not overweight. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was hydrated. And I just kind of accepted it as that's what it is. And I actually couldn't become a cosmetologist at that time because of that. I had to quit. There was a time I just walked out of I was cutting her hair and I just walked out and she didn't understand. And I was like, I have to go sit down. And I always thought, what is wrong with me? And I never, my life with a daughter with a brain injury, sometimes you don't take care of yourself. You don't have money to go get fancy tests. So I never got checked out like I should. But when I started hyperbarics for my daughter, I just knew I had to do it with her. And it was like by dive 20, it just went away. And I never thought that would happen, or I'm not sure what was wrong with me. I know it could be maybe mold, it could be a toxin, but it went away and it never came back. And that's what really, really got me into like, wow, what could this do for my daughter, for her brain fog, for even pharmaceutical damage that kind of left her brain kind of slow. So I always thought if it could do that for my brain, I know what it's doing for her. And that's also the magic of doing it yourself. If you are doing it for your husband or your child and you have it in your home, I always recommend everybody definitely try it for yourself because it's easy to watch someone, but until you go in there and feel it and see what you can do it for you, then you become more passionate about it.
Yeah, and that's so true too. Yeah, we have all the time that, a couple will come in and say, one of them is dealing with a cancer, whatever. And then the other one is, even if they're not really that skeptical, they still don't understand like the major impact that it can have on all the different body systems until they do sessions themselves. And I recommend that too, because you know how it is when you're a caretaker, you literally run yourself into the ground, taking care of this person that you love. And I consult with folks in this situation all the time because the one time I was married, I had my wife was very sick at a certain point in time, and like I remember one time I bumped into a buddy I hadn't seen for a couple of years. And he gave me a hug, and it really like emotionally overwhelmed me because I had numbed myself so much and put myself on such a back burner while I was trying to take care of her that everything in my life and me personally was just falling apart. And so I always consult with folks when they're bringing their loved ones in. I'm like, you know, you don't have a major chronic disease right now. Your loved one does, but you're going to get into a very bad place because you're caretaking. You should use hyperbarics to keep you out of that spot, and it does wonders for folks in that avenue too.
I totally agree. Well, Ryan, I really thank you for being here today to answer some of our questions and learn more about mild hyperbarics. Also, what I'm going to do when I link this, I'm going to post all your contact information, some of your rental plans, so people have an easy way to contact you. I know you're really good at getting back to people. And then for anyone watching this who did kind of want to claim being able to come in and receive a free session, how would you like them to contact you?
Just again through the website's probably best, or just directly through our email, which is insideouthyperbarics@gmail.com.
Okay, so you can go to your clinic just to use to trial it. You can go to your clinic to rent monthly. You can also go to you to purchase a chamber at home with guidance. And I know your clinic also offers a range of supplements, the infrared sauna, and you also have packages that kind of combine the infrared sauna with the hyperbaric, so you can get a really like a detox treatment with the HBOT. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct as well. Yeah. So we have basically these monthly memberships where you can do them, which brings the price way down on each treatment. But you can just do just hyperbarics. You can do a combo of hyperbarics and sauna together, or you can just do sauna by itself. So
Okay, good to know. Thank you. And I'm definitely going to link the link to that to find those package deals also for the listeners in the area.
awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for having me on today. It was great chatting with you. Keep up the amazing work with your daughter. It's been fun to watch her progress over the years as you've been, unwinding some of those mysteries that she has in her health, and just appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, us too. And definitely, if anyone watching this has any further questions about any topics we touched on, reached out to Ryan. I know you also have some great past YouTube videos you've done on the subjects with reviews, customer experiences, and education material. So I'm also going to link that for anyone who wants to learn more about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys have an amazing day.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. We'll see you.